What's up, everybody? Richard Dolan here for a courageous conversation.
Well, man, today you're right. There's no going back.
How do you feel the weight of that desire?
I have been there for a while.
The story's still being written, and you cut the story short. As they say, I'm playing with house money.
They said, neo-fascist.
You can't imagine, Richard. I've heard everything now.
But I'll tell you what, you ain't never buying your time back. Value your time.
Nothing can humiliate me. I've already done that.
He said, you taught me there was more to life than pain, and that kind of opened the door for thousands and thousands of kids.
Like, you just show up no matter what.
This is an opportunity to kind of delve into yourself and actually pull out what you might have in there.
It forced me to think about life after basketball.
And it's funny because people need to laugh.
You just pass it through, brother.
Once you start a courageous conversation, there ain't ever going back to an ordinary one.
We're here for a profound, most honorable moment with the author, the man, not just a myth, but the legend, Mr. Robin Sharma, my dear friend who just wrote the book, The Wealth Money Can't Buy, and obviously the book you can't get. It's on a global release right now, and he's currently touring worldwide, releasing this book in cities everywhere, and likely near you. I'm sitting with him right now. Robin Sharma, my dear friend, and a celebrated author and a leader second to none. My friend, first, how are you?
I'm great. Sorry about my throat, Richard. It's because of this podcast tour, but it's great to see you again, and thank you for having me here.
It's great to hear you of the most velvety sensations. But take care of that voice because I know the world needs to hear from you. Robin, as we get on to a conversation, I couldn't help but frame our history, our past. I've celebrated who you are as an author since Mega Living, if you can go that far back. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, an incredible book that has been celebrated across dozens of languages, across nearly hundreds of countries, celebrating, dare I say it, nearly 30 years in publication. It's amazing to see from The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, Who Will Cry When You Die, Leader Without Title, and dozens more, to get to this book. Why now?
Well, society has told us that if you want to be successful, you need to make a lot of money. If you want to be rich, you need a big portfolio, maybe a big house. So a lot of people have climbed that mountain, or they're halfway up the mountain, and many of them end up cash rich but life poor. And there's a lot of people who've fallen into this cultural programming, but they found that it hasn't made any difference in terms of their joy, peace, and happiness. Makes me think of what Jim Carrey said. He said, I wish everyone could become rich and famous to realize it doesn't make a difference. So I've written this book, The Wealth Money Can't Buy. It's based on this model I've been teaching to my clients. They include billionaires, professional sports stars, entertainment royalty. Been teaching to them for about 15 years. And money is one of the 8 forms of wealth. Money is important. It puts food on the family table. It allows you to do nice things for the people you love. It allows you to help people in need. There's 25 chapters in the book on how the billionaires I've mentored, how they do it, how they think, what their habits are, what their strategies are. But there's 7 other forms of wealth, and when you discover them, you can truly live a rich life.
I love that, not having read the book, because there's no way you can get it until it simultaneously releases worldwide in all the cities and countries that you're so well known in, adored and admired. What's interesting about what you've written now, do you feel like a part of your life, the stage and state you might be in, has something to do with reshaping your ideology, your thinking, your approaching? What impact has your stage in life, not dare I say age, but stage? You're in a different place with a different purpose. Has that shaped this new work?
It's a brilliant question, and I think yes, it has. Tonight after this interview, I'm having dinner with my 87-year-old father and my mother and my daughter Bianca, who you met her when she was a little kid. And so, if you have a great family life, I've got a wonderful partner, Al. I've got a wonderful son, and I've just got a great family life. Well, it's occurring to me more than ever before. That is worth more than all the money in the world. One of the forms of wealth in the book is your health. So there's a great philosophical proverb, which is when we are young, we would sacrifice all of our health for wealth. When we are old and figure out what's most important in life, we'd be willing to sacrifice all of our wealth for a day of good health. So there are these other currencies And often, Richard, we take them for granted until we lose them. You know, I've mentored billionaires who have all the things in the world, but they've no one to share it with. So these other forms of wealth are really important. Service, adventure, growth, craft. So part of it is, you know, I've got a number of years under my belt and I'm seeing what's most important more than ever before. It's coming into very sharp focus. And I think I don't want people to climb the wrong mountain and miss out on what's most important. And then I think secondly, we're in a world of polycrisis. We've got wars, we've got pandemics, we've got climate change, we've got social polarization. And finding out these 8 forms of wealth is really going to give people that sense of grounding and that sense of joy that so many are looking for.
Well, you know, this work especially matters to me. I know the 5 a.m. Club has, been a riveting, dare I say, a paradigm shifting phenomenon for people who've now changed their relationship to what time they wake up and their habits and the things that they do with their day commencing at 5 a.m. I really believe that this work is likely setting you up to do the exact same thing. A seismic shift in the way people's relationship shifts with money and, dare I say, wealth. You know, tell me, when you look at your history, because you talked about the number of years on your belt, it's amazing to think that over the past few decades, you've been looked upon and revered for spiritual leadership, self-leadership, and dare I say even having a really great relationship with self. Now that you're transcending that journey, is this a compliment or a detraction from what you've always been doing, which is core to some of your ideology and thinking?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think I've been doing the same thing for 31 years. I teach leadership, I teach self-mastery, I teach creativity, I teach productivity. So, and how to live a meaningful life. I mean, the book ends with live fully so you die empty. The book ends with another chapter, which is have a living funeral. And I think what I'm really trying to do with this book is offer some principles, as well as hundreds of tools on productivity, creativity, family, wellness, growth. The 4th form of wealth is your craft. A job is only a job if you see it as a job, no matter what you do. Whether you're an astronaut, whether you're a street sweeper. If you can see your work as your craft and push magic into the world and be a student of it, you're going to find incredible levels of fulfillment. And you're also going to bring a lot of light to a lot of people. But what I'm really trying to do is help people in this age where so many people are busy being busy, to break free of the trance, to break free of the noise so they can hear the signal about what is it really, what is a great life, a rich life? What is a fulfilling life? And I've tried to deconstruct it in the chapters through the book.
No, I love it because, if you Google anything motivational or self-awakening, your name's right at the top, alongside legends, both past and present. And so when we look at and celebrate your publication pathway to the wealth money can't buy, it's riveting to see that your portfolio of impact is just widening and deepening. Do you believe this catalyzes some of the greater, newer thinking for you as you look forward into the next 10, 20 years?
It's a very fresh book. I spent 12 months of my life, Richard, handcrafting this book, The Wealth Money Can't Buy. I did 20 different manuscripts, maybe 10,000 different iterations per manuscript. So I hope I haven't rested on my laurels. And I could have mailed it in. My publisher would have been happy with anything I sent them. But I believe I have a sacred trust with my readers. And I'm only as good as my last book. And I think what makes a master, and I'm certainly not saying I'm a master, but success is a great trap because you start to believe the marketing material. And I think the thing about a master is they always think like a beginner. And so what I try to do with this book is not advance a previous philosophy, but disrupt my winning formula and make this book simpler, more accessible, fresher, even the style of writing, the methodology. There's the 2-phone protocol in there. There's the 10,000 dinner rule. There's the Penham principle. There's, the habit stack of multi-billionaires. There's this philosophy along with tactics. But I just wanted to go very, very deep in this book.
Who did you have in mind when you wrote this book? Because, from one father to another, I would imagine that being one may have impacted you, given, you're the father of Colby and Bianca, but also being, the life partner of a beautiful, powerful woman, and more importantly, being such a dedicated family man who's also rediscovered, if I dare say, maybe amplified your artistry, given where you live largely in the world. And I'll leave it for you to declare where it is that you do live. But I've seen a far more powerful, creative, intuitive force, dare I even say disruptive. Are those accurate observations of you and by a fan and other fans, millions around the world, where we follow you and watch what you post and watch what you write and watch what you share? Do you think that's true?
Well, I think you're being extremely generous to me, and I'm very grateful. I just want to, as simple as it sounds, I want to be a humble servant. And I also take great pride in my craft. And I do it less about the accolades and the fame and the fortune. Those things don't particularly attract me. But I live in an old farmhouse on an olive grove. And I just want to push my best work out into the world and help as many people as possible. And I think, I live in a country of artists. I live in a country of sculptors in Italy. And so maybe that's influenced me.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and either in the spirit of saving some of your voice, because I know we've only got a few minutes left together, but as you've often cited in even your posts, being in the heart of the Renaissance, if it were, where the greatest geniuses, both creative and even scientific, were celebrated in early century, both art and poetry. It's amazing to see who you've emerged as an author. And what I want to say, and is maybe another acknowledgement, what I love about the work that you're now crafting, evidenced by likely the 5 a.m. Club and even onwards, is that, Robin, you've become an unshakable living demonstration of the work you publish. So it's not just like you're well-researched and you look for the most innovative approaches, you're living those approaches. So when you speak about it's not about fame and money, maybe some people who'd watch this interview and say, oh, sure, easy for you to say because you make likely a lot of money because you've sold millions of copies of your books and you do lots of seminars and workshops around the world, but you do live quite humbly in a farmhouse out in Italy. How do you find yourself living today compared to your 40-year-ago start, where today, one could argue you are a living demonstration of may I say, the wealth money simply can't buy?
Well, I sure don't want to hold myself up as a living demonstration of some ideal. I'm a work in progress. And
That's fair.
And I try to, you don't have to agree so quickly. And I never hold myself out to be some kind of a guru. But one thing I do is I work very hard on myself. I believe our primary relationship with ourselves, and what I call in my methodology, mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. There are a lot of pundits, they talk about mindset. Mindset is everything. I have a lot of respect for them, but I don't agree mindset is everything. Mindset is simply your psychology. As human beings, we have an emotionality. We have an emotional life. If you don't purify that or work on that or calibrate that, then you'll never do your best work and live your finest life. But not only mindset and heart set, we have our health set. It's our physicality. Then we have our soul set, our emotionality. It's not spiritual, it's not religious. It's just our soul set is our relationship with our truest self. That's our self that we were before the world hurt us and told us to disbelieve in ourselves. Our soul set is our wisdom. Our soul set is our intuition. Our soul set is our bravery. Our soul set is our authenticity. Our soul set, when we build that relationship with our heroic self, it's the undefeatable part of us. So one thing I do well is I work very hard to develop myself. And I was just saying to Mihal, my teammate who's here at this interview, the more I get up at 4 o'clock these days. I'm not saying there's anything special about it, but I love it even better than 5 a.m. I hear the roosters. I hear the dogs barking. I can smell the country air. And for 45 minutes every morning, I do what I call MVP. You know sports very, very well. MVP is most valuable player. In my work, it's meditation, visualization, and prayer. And I've been doing the 4 a.m. for about a year now. 45 minutes every day. It's remarkable what it does in terms of your devotion to your craft, your devotion to your mission, and just healing and developing yourself. And so I think maybe that's one of the changes I've made. I work hard on myself, and maybe that inner growth is having some effect in what I do in the outside world.
I love that. For the sake of maybe memory recall, but sharing with you a moment that you actually made a massive impact in my life among many moments of investment for impact that you had made in the time I've known you was a particular time you hosted a lovely gathering of probably your closest 200-300 folks that were huge champions for you, I being one. And in that room, you had candles laid out throughout the room, you might recall, in our hometown. And you gave a talk, and it was aligned with one of the releases of your newest books at the time, which was Who Will Cry When You Die? Now that book was small in size. Literally, it was quite tiny, if you recall, but it was profound in its impact because it was actually reciting an old Sanskrit poem, which was about the father called for his son. You know how the story goes. You published it, you wrote it. And it was the Who Will Cry When You Die statement that really stuck with me. And now I feel for myself, you are a great poster child for that statement. The who will cry when you die, it starts to feel a little bit like legacy, which you've touched on over the number of publications over time. Do you touch on the term legacy inside this new book?
You might be surprised. I talk about at the end, I talk the final of the 8 forms of wealth. The final one is service. Because I think if you are helpful, if you're a teacher, developing children, if you're a firefighter or a gardener, making your neighborhood better, if you're an entrepreneur, distributing rich value ethically to as many people as possible, you have a currency, you have some wealth. That's a rich life. So I talk about the shortness of life, but I don't talk about legacy much anymore. You're absolutely right. Who Will Cry When You Die was all about, that Campbell saying, to live in the hearts of those we leave behind is never to die. But now I actually, and this might be a disruptive idea, but Richard, I think legacy is a sport of the ego. Who cares how we are remembered when we're no longer here? We'll just be dust in an urn on a mantle above a fireplace next to some soccer trophies. And only a few people are really going to care. So legacy doesn't matter. Instead, put your energy and your focus on living while you're alive. The paradox is when you do that and try to live your richest life and understand the wealth money can't buy, you will leave a legacy and have all these people at your funeral if that's important. But I hear people talking about how many people do you want to live? I used to do it 20 years ago. You heard me saying, how many people are going to be at your funeral, and who cares? Yeah. Who cares? Just be great when you're alive.
I remember when I became a dad and I knew I was going to become one, I didn't come from a really healthy relationship with my father. And so when I knew I was going to become a dad, I rushed out and I bought all the things I knew that I would love to have collected so that when I was going to die in the inevitable future, and hopefully not soon, my son would have something that I would leave behind. So I was obsessed, back to your old thinking and not necessarily your ideology, but old ideology, which was, who will cry when you die, but what will you leave when you go? And so I amassed all these collections, Robin, book collection, album collection, all the things I would wish that my father would leave for me when he goes, because he's still here. I wanted that for myself. My ego wanted that for myself. My son becomes of an age where we have this conversation, and I noticed myself after the 5 a.m. club having a bit of a different perspective. And I said to my son, all these books and you see all these albums, even this watch I'm wearing, it'll all be yours when I pass on. And he says, why? I'm just going to sell it. I don't need any of that stuff. And I said, why? And he said, well, because all that matters is just time with you, Dad. And so what I share that story with you is because it feels like what we, as your fans and your readers, your followers and your faithful, we're also rediscovering ourselves through the discoveries you're having yourself. So as you grow and you're like the test pilot to the thinking, I'm happy to report that we're following your lead, my friend, and we too are having those self aha moments where, yeah, it's not about the stuff. So I would say, to move on, is that legacy isn't what you leave. I think what you leave is determined by how you live, how you love, how you laugh. These are the changes I've seen in you. Enjoying life, having a thirst for life, being in a part of the world where that's what all that matters is morning breeze, farm fresh air, and perhaps a 4 a.m. wake-up call. Would you agree? Would you agree that that is truly a part of the wealth money can't buy? Moving away from legacy, but it's really a way of life?
I'd say it's a part of it, but it's not everything. You know, enjoying life is important, but doing amazing work is equally important. Aristotle talked about the third mean, the golden mean, the golden mean, the middle path. So too much fun is just as out of balance as too much work. And I think hard work has got a bad rap right now. I'm not for hustle and grind. I've been writing for years about, you mentioned the 5 a.m. Club, the twin cycles of elite performance, the high excellence cycle and the deep recovery cycle. I think rest is not a luxury, rest is a necessity. But I think the world has gone to an extreme, Richard, where it's like, working too hard on a book. Well, if you're working on a book and you're trying to do your best work and help people and pursue a craft, that's beautiful. I think that's the power of the 8 forms of wealth. That is the core foundation of the wealth money can't buy. See, because adventure is one of them. Adventure is the 7th form of wealth. It's important to enjoy the fruits of your labor, to experience awe and wonder, of course, but you don't want to be doing it all the time. So the 4th form of wealth, craft, being productive. There's 25 chapters on how the most productive, creative people in the world, how they do it. So the 8 forms of wealth is a complete form or system to live your richest life.
But I love that. Let's pause for a moment and really put a punctuation mark there. This is a book for the ages. It's a contrarian approach that not only disrupts, but I dare say challenges old thinking. When you think about, you're not talking about just currency, you're talking about culture, you're not talking about assets, you're talking about adventure. And these words seem like they actually are juxtapositioned. You wouldn't think of these terms when taking on your financial life, especially understanding the relationship you have with wealth. Do you feel any part of your authorship, this new book, this publication, being released worldwide simultaneously this month? Tell me, how much of it do you feel as you authored it? You knew, Robin, you knew in your bones, your blood was bubbling with it. You knew it would upset or disrupt the old thinking, the norm, dare I say.
Well, I just really believe that our culture has mesmerized us and hypnotized us, and it's confused us. And you have too many good souls chasing the wrong things, losing precious time. I want to be really clear. The 5th form of wealth is money. There's nothing wrong with it. It can do amazing things. It gives you freedom. It prevents you from being backed into a corner to make choices you don't want to make. You can help more people. It's fantastic, but it's only one of the 8 forms of wealth. And so I think in society, pedestals the billionaire. Who do we put on the magazine cover? Or in newspapers or online, whatever it is. This person's such a success. He or she just had a liquidity event for their company. They did a great job. But what about the gardener in your neighborhood who works like Rembrandt painted and keeps the neighborhood beautiful? What about the firefighter who thinks he or her job is so incredibly important and they don't have a lot of money, they have a lot of pride and a strong character? What about the person who is a minimalist and doesn't need anything, but they wake up every morning saying, I'm not following the crowd, I'm living my values, got a great relationship with my family, and I'm walking the planet lightly? Is that not a rich person? So you talk about assets. Assets are not only the assets in your equities and your bonds, and your cash and your precious metals. The assets are those other forms of wealth that I talk about in the book as well. If you mentioned your son. I met you and your son one day, and I saw the way the way he is around you, and he has such deep respect for you, right? That's wealth. What about someone who says, I'm in an industry, everyone's cutting corners, but I'm going to be generous versus scarce. And I'm going to give the greatest service, the best, let's say it's a restaurant, the freshest food, and I'm going to prepare it with love. Isn't that a form of wealth? I mean, ultimately, what's the real wealth? It's how you feel, in part. It's how you feel when your head hits the pillow every single night. There's a lot of rich people financially who can't stand themselves. And there's a lot of people with not a lot of money who feel like they're the luckiest people in the world. Bob Marley said it really well. He said, he was asked, "Are you a rich man?" He said, "What do you mean?" The interviewer said, "You have a lot of possessions." Bob Marley, he said, "Possessions make you rich?" He goes, "I don't have those kinds of riches. My riches is life."
Well said. Well said. I'm a huge fan of Bob Marley, and I'm a huge fan of all you said. And by the way, as we're speaking about sons, it is very apropos to say you two are wealthy. I mean, Colby is a great emulation of your commitment and dedication to the world of making an impact.
Thank you.
I mean, what an honor to see him blazing his trails, publishing his own works, making a difference, being an instrument for impact, Robin. Like, how cool is that? And you're right. I mean, as fathers, we both can look at our children and see the legacy we really have left in them, in the way they live, in the way they lead, in the way they love. We've only got a handful of minutes left, and I want to get to a couple of real hard-pressing questions when it comes to this book. When most of these books come out, and when they adorn titles such as wealth, oftentimes people think, oh, I'm not rich enough, I'm not wealthy enough to read this book. Who is this book for, Robin, from your perspective, when you put pen to paper for those 12 gruesome months, and I met you during that time, and I saw what it did to your life, and on behalf of your fans, and I being one of them, we're grateful for the effort you put in it, but I'm not wealthy enough might be the conversation some people have to read a book like this. What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say that's exactly what the book is not about. If that makes any English sense.
It does.
It's not a book for rich people. It's a book for a human being who wants to live their richest life. It's exactly what the 8 forms of wealth model is about. It's exactly what the book is about. It's for the startup entrepreneur. It's for the teacher. It's for the pizza maker. It's for the billionaire. It's for the head of state. It's for the professional athlete. It's for the coder. It's for the yoga teacher. It's for the person in Bogota, for the person in Japan. It's for anyone who wants to learn the truth of a great life, along with hundreds of tools and how to do it every day.
Is there a prime time for someone to get this on their bookshelves, on their nightstands, and in their hands? Is it possibly be too young or too old for this book? And I know that's an arbitrary conversation to perhaps have, but who is it really ideally for, given the stage of life people are at?
It really is for everyone. I'm sure there's going to be 10-year-olds. I mean, I've had, I think the youngest on The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari was 7 years old. And I've had 100-year-old people plus reading my books. And I would say out of any book I've written, and it feels very true, I've never written a book that's so accessible. The 5 a.m. Club, millions of people are following it. But it's, in many ways, it's a book for, well, I don't want to say, just people want to be more productive, because it's much more than that. But it's a bit of a specialized book. I wrote a book, The Leader Who Had No Title. It's more, it's for leaders who have positions and who don't have positions. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, pretty general book. But The Wealth Money Can't Buy, it's the most mainstream, accessible book, even the way I set it up. I can't wait for you to read it, but I set it up like a coaching conversation. So I take people into the farmhouse, into my writing room, and on the road with me. So it's a very intimate, accessible book.
All right, I'm going to tee up the final question for the time that we've got, because we've only got now just a few short minutes. And I can't help but get this for record, but I'll never forget being the official stand-in host for a very, very popular national show on Chum Radio 1050. And you were my guest. And I had no idea what I was doing. You had some idea of what you were doing. But we spent a splendid hour chatting on air, coast to coast. 18 million listeners were tuned in listening to what you had to say about your then success with the monk who sold his Ferrari. As I look at that conversation, I had asked you a question that I found in my journal, something you taught me to do years and years and years ago, which I deploy to this day. But one of the statements you made, which I'm going to represent you to, is I asked the question, how will you know your book made a difference in the world? That was phrased somewhat like that. I didn't make record of the question, I made record of your answer. And you said, people are living a much more purposeful life. It was a very simple, profound statement, especially during that time. Now, I come to the wealth money can't buy. We're sitting here a year from now. The book's a massive success, making an imminent impact in the lives that you wanted it to. If you were to see the needle move on a dashboard or on a scoreboard that matters to you in your heart, what difference do you want to see this directly make for people? What would happen in the world for you to say, that book I wrote, it made the difference I wanted it to?
I would say readers saying, this book caused me to completely rethink what wealth means. And this book caused me to realize what a truly great life is all about. And this book caused me to realize I had a lot more wealth in my life than I was paying attention to, because I bought into what society told me wealth was, which is money and things, but I had all these other currencies that I wasn't applauding and I wasn't recognizing. And so it really helped me profoundly in my life.
Well, I want you to know in closing that, and for posterity's sakes, let me say this, that I would not be half the person I am today had it not been for your work, your publications, your dedication, your bow tie, the stories that you shared, the stories you shared, but also the works that you've produced. I just want you to know, Robin, and it comes from the bottom of my heart, that being in this interview, in this conversation with you is one part of how I wish to honor not just the memory of those times, but to really champion the history that we share. And I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for your friendship, your patience, but your commitment to having quality conversations with me. So thank you.
You're so generous and so kind to me. Thank you for all those great words. If I've been helpful to you, it makes me so happy. And congratulations on your journey and everything you've become and all the people you're touching as well, Richard. So it's been great to catch up with you here.
I appreciate it. Well, speaking of touching, it's been great touching you during this interview. Proverbially, of course, I haven't reached over there and given you a hug yet, but listen, congratulations on the book. When is it hitting bookstands? When can we get our hands on it? I know pre-orders available on Amazon.
Yeah, it's the worldwide release is April the 9th.
April the 9th. There we've got it. April the 9th, folks. April the 9th, 2024. Be the first or be the last. The wealth money can't buy. Robin, congratulations.
Thank you.